The Grand Theft Auto series has never been one for subtlety within its large cast of stereotypical gangsters, mobsters, drug dealers, corrupt cops, and all-around nutjobs. That's not to say there aren't exceptions or that even those intended to be walking caricatures can't be entertaining, but when your role is just to offer up ridiculous, out-of-the-ordinary missions while perpetuating the artificialness of the world you inhabit, it can be hard to break away and become something, well, real. Today I want to talk to you all about one of the few characters within the Grand Theft Auto series who, through the power of overused jokes, has sadly seen some of his stereotypical traits reinforced and found himself as one of the more infamous characters from the series. Personally, I not only feel quite the opposite, but I also think it's high time he got his moment in the limelight.
I'm glad you turned up and made some Russian killers burn down my home and business. Oh, yeah, thanks, Nico. Thanks a bunch. Is that better? Come in. Make yourself at home. What's mine is yours.
Roman Bellic, like his cousin Nico, grew up in what was once Yugoslavia and were both forced to suffer through an assortment of problems during their childhood, from abusive fathers to having to witness the horrors of war while they were still only teenagers. After fleeing to America thanks to his mother spending the last of what they had before she tragically died, Roman slowly but steadily managed to work his way over the next 15 years to owning a cab, to eventually running his own cab company located in the broke boroughs of Liberty City, and even began dating his employee Mallory Bardas. And while many of these achievements helped Roman feel in control of his life, his goal of living the modern-day American dream was still far from out of his reach. Frustrated, he eventually fell prey to the trappings of the criminal underworld, station and broker, through his constant gamblings and loan debts. Thankfully though, during his years in the States, he was able to make friends with some of the more friendly local criminals, such as Jamaican drug dealer Little Jacob and street racing enthusiast Brucey Kibutz. Despite the problems he faced, Roman would continue to write back home to his remaining family members and overplay his success to them, having them believe that he was currently living the high life, as it were, or at least the overglorified version in his mind anyways. By 2008, he would reunite with Nico, who had come to Liberty City to take revenge on the man who had betrayed him and his comrades during the war, but also out of the hope that, like his cousin, he too could find a new prosperous life for himself here, something that seemed like a possibility until he found out what things were really like once he arrived. The issue surrounding paying off Roman's debts would act as the core motivator for Nico when he first arrived in Liberty City, until the two would be forced to climb out of much deeper holes, from having the Russian mob try to hunt them down, to Nico being forced to work for corrupt cops in international affairs, to eventually finding himself as a valued asset for multiple other criminal outfits like the Irish and Italian-American mobs. While Roman is shown to be quite the gullible optimist, who at times can come off as if the universe is on his side when money is in his grasp, for the most part he often abhors violence, most in part out of fear for the repercussions that can come from it, but also possibly for the effect he knows it has on his cousin. It's interesting to see how easily Roman has transitioned into this new land and culture, with him almost drunk on the many luxuries that are provided to just about everyone, as well as those that seem like they are in reach, when they are so very often not. We also see this disconnect towards his own culture and how much of his own language he's forgotten over the years, as well as how much he almost seems to fear going back to his homeland, and that it will only remind him of all those he's lost, and possibly the guilt of not being there for his deceased mother. Character growth wise, while we hear from him that while he loves Mallory, he's afraid of committing to her out of the belief that their relationship is holding him back, mostly from his particular sexual cravings. While his recent brushes with death could have been what finally pushed Roman into proposing to her, I personally like to think that after reuniting with Florian Kravic and seeing him not only move on from the war but also express his love for another so openly, he finally saw how wonderful life can be when shared with another. Even though Roman never assists Nico in any shootouts throughout the game, him tagging along for one of the two final missions shows the extent of his loyalty to his cousin, even if all we see him do is kinda help him onto a chopper and dispense a few words of encouragement. Now admittedly, there are some rough patches in his writing that do feel like the writers just didn't put as much thought into some scenes as they probably should have. For instance, in regard to Roman's gambling addiction, it looked to be that after getting kidnapped over his ever-rising debts, he had finally realised that looking for the fast lane to the top would be the end of him eventually. But one phone call later and we find out that all that's really changed is that he now only bets when he knows the game is rigged, which sadly seems to pay off for him as he's able to vastly improve his business as well as purchase a snazzy new flat for him and his cousin. I don't know if Dan Houser and Rupert Humphrey were just trying to make a joke about how Roman not learning a lesson paid off in the end, but it's annoying all the same. We also get 2, maybe 3 missions where Roman is just now okay with using violence to solve their problems, with even murder getting overlooked. These inconsistencies are a little frustrating, but thankfully there's still a lot of good writing behind Roman that vastly outweighs them. While Nico's journey on paper might seem like it's just your typical adrift man on a quest for revenge tale that might as well be its own genre by now, it also heavily looks at whether he can find new meaning in this strange land. Naturally, with the 2 shared early history, Roman can easily be seen as a reminder of what life could have been like for Nico, but he also gives him hope that even he can find a normal life in this land of opportunity. Roman is the anchor that Nico needs to remind himself that money and violence are not what make him who he is. For as much as everyone pokes fun at all the calls between the two throughout the entirety of GTA 4, I truly think it works to properly establish this familial bond between the two of them. One element to this that, in all honesty, I didn't even know about until I started writing this video, is that there are certain missions that after completing them, you can call up Roman yourself and just talk to him about all the things going on. Admittedly, Roman's no therapist, and not even the bad GTA kind, but there are times where you feel like Nico just needs to hear a comforting voice that he maybe trusts more than himself. Towards the end of the game, Roman tries his best to convince Nico to not take revenge on both Draco Breivik and Dmitry Rascalov, the latter of which could lead to the two finally walking away from this world of violence and death at last if he can just move on. Roman's life goals might seem rather materialistic and don't necessarily provide any answers to Nico's post-war trauma, but are they any less unfulfilling than Nico's desire for revenge? Sadly, if the player decides to go down this route of working with Dmitry, Roman is caught in the line of fire of Dmitry's second attempt on Nico's life and dies at his own wedding, and what we see next is the full rage of a man who has lost one of his last attachments to this world.
Yo, Nico, calm down, man. Yo. Easy.
He told me to leave it. I left it.
Nico, get up, man. Get up.
Oh,
Gotta
man.
get you out of here, man. Police them so far.
Ladies, this is Roman Berlik, but I guess you already know that. Leave a message.
The backlash against Roman and his constant invites, just like with Titus' fake laugh in Final Fantasy X, is something that I found humorous along with everyone else at the start, but slowly began to get annoyed with over how much the meme began to encompass the context of the character. For a good while, it seemed like the extent of Rockstar's skills in storytelling was to make a bunch of off-the-wall missions with a few movie references scattered about here and there. While I can't claim to have closely observed the evolution of Rockstar's developed games for years now since they found lightning in a bottle with GTA 3, Grand Theft Auto 4 really feels like a turning point when it came to how they went about writing their characters. It's still not perfect, and we still have those stock cartoon characters showing up from time to time, though it's now mostly just from side missions. It feels weird saying that we may not have had all the fond memories with the likes of the Van der Linde gang if it were not for Roman Bellic of all people, but who knows? Maybe Rockstar took a bit of inspiration from themselves and went on from there. One of the more special yet brief moments from the franchise is found in the mission aptly named Roman Sorrow, in which his home and business are burnt down by the Russian mob, forcing him and Nico to flee. The mission has no real confrontation for the player to go up against, but instead we are given a much deeper insight into what it is Roman really wants from life, and that in truth, being on the top matters so much less than just being around the ones that he loves. Something that for the most part goes against the goal that is handed to players in just about every GTA game, that being earning money and power to live however you want to live. There's a lot that I feel can be learned from some of the most down-to-earth characters through media, especially when your main protagonist is in need of someone to help guide their hand a little.
I'm glad I came here too. Not because of the place. It's interesting, but also strange. Too noisy. I'm glad because of you. To have a real friend in the world. That was all I think I ever wanted. And in you, I have that person.
Thank you, cousin.
You are the man I wanted to be, Roman. Happy, kind, a good person.
And you are the man I wanted to be. Strong, unbending, with integrity. Life is very strange. Thank you, cousin. We should hang out again soon. I'm sorry, but that is mine!
You're going to regret this course of action, friend.